Dr. Shankar, by profession, is a medical doctor. He is a postgraduate in psychiatry. He is a Sanskrit scholar. He is by profession a doctor, though he is a doctor. Out of conviction and love, he is an Ashtavadhani in Sanskrit. Along with his practice of psychiatry, he is also pursuing his PhD studies with a thesis on psychiatry practice on emotions from the Indian perspective at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Dr. Shankar. Dr. Shankar will be addressing us with his pet subject of the Vedas as seen through the eyes of classical Sanskrit poets. Dr. Shankar, ladies and gentlemen.
आसाद्य पंडितायं भवन्ति हस्तापचेय मोक्षफलाः वेदद्रुमाय तस्मै प्रणव प्रथमांकुराय नमः. Let me begin my talk with a small humorous verse. We have just finished our lunch and I don't know how many of us can concentrate. I'm including myself also. भक्ष्यभोज्यादिपूर्णायाः प्रसादात् उदरश्रियः जृम्भतां मद्वचो गुम्बः रसिको न तु जृम्भताम्. Let my words fructify. Let the audience not be put into a sleep. My topic is on the Vedas as seen through the eyes of classical Sanskrit poets. At the outset, I would also like to confess that I do not have any grasp of the Vedic lore as such. My interest in the Vedas is basically secondary to my interest in classical Sanskrit literature and poesy. But since poetry describes everything under the sun, including the sun itself, it is not surprising to find allusions to the Vedas in Sanskrit poetry especially. I shall at first begin with a talk on how the legacy of poetry, Sanskrit poetry, Sahitya Vidya or Alankara Shastra as it is called, is traced back to the Vedas. This has been a parampara among us to trace back every Vidya to the Vedas. And for this, I would like to draw upon what is said by Rajashekhara. He was a poet from Maharashtra, and in his Kavya Mimamsa, especially the first 3 chapters of Kavya Mimamsa, he talks about how the Alankara Shastra and Sahitya Vidya took their birth. He places Alankara Shastra among the Vedangas and calls it the 7th Vedanga, apart from the other Vedangas like Kalpa, Nirukta and others. And the reason he gives is Tat Swarupa Parijnanat Vedartha Anavagatehe. Because if you do not understand Alankara Shastra, you cannot get a complete sense of what Vedic hymns mean. And he gives an example, the famous hymn Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakhaya. And he mentions how this verse is a combination of 2 Alankaras, the Upama and the Vetireka Alankara. And the knowledge of these 2 Alankaras is essential to get across the purport of this verse. Upama, when the 2 birds are spoken of as being equal, or the Jivatman and Paramatman are spoken of as the two birds, and Vyatireka when the difference between the two is shown. He reiterates the same in his Bala Ramayana, where he calls it as poetry as Nigamasya Angam Saptamam, the seventh Anga of Nigama. Later on, he also includes Kavishastra among the various Vidyasthanas, the 15th Vidyasthana, and also among the Vidyas, Anvikshiki, Trayi, Varta, and Dandaniti. He also explains one of the Vedic hymns from famous Vedic hymns, which has been actually applied by Patanjali to Vyakarana. He applies this to Kavya Shastra. Chatvari Shringas Trayosya Veda. This has been done by Bharata also in his Natya Shastra, the 17th chapter of Natya Shastra, where the Shringaha are spoken of as being the Varnaha, Saptahasta spoken of as the Saptaswaras, and etc. In the next chapter, he speaks of how the Sahitya Kavya Purusha was born from Saraswati and calls him Sarasvateya. And it is interesting to note that Sarasvateya was not only well versed in poetry, but he was also well versed in the Vedas. In fact, the Mahabharata also has a similar story where Sarasvateya is said to have taught sages the Vedas, retaught them the Vedas when the Vedas were lost. This is just a prelude, and now I shall draw upon some examples from Sanskrit literature to show how the Vedas have been seen by poets. And these are the various subheadings under which I will be discussing. Vedic episodes as an inspiration for a literary work, Vedic metrical structure revisited, Vedic phrases or parts of Vedic phrases taken verbatim to foster a poetic idea, allusion to the Vedas for fostering a poetic idea, allusion to the Vedas for a philosophical idea, the Vedas as Upamana and Upameya, the standard of comparison and the compared, the Vedangas and their description as done by poets, the praise of Vedas as made by poets, Vedic rituals made a subject of description, Vedic way of life described, and the Vedas sometimes made fun of or criticized in a light vein. The first is Vedic episodes as an inspiration for a literary work. I'll not go into extreme details of all these subheadings because of time constraint, but then we all know how Kalidasa has adopted the Urvashi Purura Samvada of Rigveda, 10th Mandala, to his drama Vikramorvashiyam. However, later poets have mainly drawn upon Itihasas and the Puranas for their subject rather than from the Vedas, though the Veda is a fertile ground for such subjects. The Vedic metrical structure has also been adopted by not many actually. I can just cull out one example from the entire gamut of Sanskrit literature, and that is by Kalidasa himself, where he has adopted the Rik Chandas in the 5th Anka of Abhignana Shakuntala, where Kanva uses the Vedic structure, metrical structure for his verse. Ami Vedim Paritah Kripta Drishnyaha Samidvantah Pranta Sanstirna Dharbaha Apagnanto Duritam Havyagandair Vaitanastwam Vannaya Pavayantu. The first three lines of this verse don't come under any specific classical metrical structure, but the fourth, Vaitanastwam Vannaya Pavayantu, is more akin to the Shalini, which is used in classical Sanskrit. Sometimes poets have taken verbatim parts of Vedas, phrases of Vedas, for fostering their ideas. I give few examples from Stotra Kavyas, because it's understandable that Stotra Kavyas would allude to Vedas much more than Mahakavyas or Natakas. This is a verse from Rangaraja Stava by Parashara Bhatta. Amatam matam matam athamatam stutam parininditam bhavati ninditam stutam iti Rangaraja mudaghoshayatrai stumahe vayam kimiti tanna shaknumaha, which alludes to the Kenopanishad verse, Yasyamatam tasya matam matam yasyana vedasah avijñatam vijanatam vijñatam avijanatam. The poets here tells that if I know you, it means I have not known you. If I don't know you, it means I have known you. If I praise you, it means I am blaming you. And if I blame you, it means I am praising you. So, O Rangaraja, tell me how I should start to talk about you. And this has an exact mirror reflection in this Kena Upanishad verse. Another verse from the same Rangarajastava. So anga veda yadiva nakileti vedah sandegdyanarghavidam atmani ranganatham sthane yadesha kalu dosha mali masabir madvagbir aisham atishayanam avrunoti, which has which mirrors in asyadyaksha parame vyoman so anga veda yadivana veda. Here the poet says that probably Ranganatha doesn't know about his greatness at all. Even Ranganatha is unaware of his greatness. If he had been aware of his greatness, he would have not polluted himself with my words. So the poet says that he is polluting the God with his words, and the God is allowing himself to be polluted by his words because, according to the Vedas, the God is not aware of what he is at all. This is a verse from Champu Bharata, a very charming verse which is about the Kirata Arjuna episode described there. The fight between Shiva as Kirata and Arjuna. Sarushiva hare vikrishta chape sasharam shailasutapi jata shanka maghavat suta mangalaya devi manasa yata ishushrutim jajapa. Arjuna and Shiva are fighting with each other, and Shiva has drawn his bow to let out an arrow on Arjuna, and accompanying Shiva is Parvati. Parvati is the mother of all beings. She is Jagat Janani, and it is not surprising that she would be anxious whether Arjuna would be hit by the arrow. So when Shiva drew his bow, then Maghavat Suta Mangalaya, so that Partha, Arjuna, might escape unhurt, what did she do? She chanted this mantra in her mind. The mantra Yata Ishu Shrutim, Yata Ishu. So, Yata Ishu Shivatama Shivam Babhuvate Danu Shiva Sharavya Yatava Tayano Mrudaya. So, the poet says that Parvati chanted this verse in her mind so that Partha should escape unhurt. This is a verse from Prabodha Chandrodaya by Krishna Mishra, where he actually paraphrases the Vedic verse Dvasuparna, and he makes the entire verse fit the Upajati meter. Taudvau Suparnau Sayujau Sakhayau Samana Vriksham Parishasvajate Ekastayo Pippalamatti Pakvam Anyastvanashnan Abhishakashiti. So he has completely changed the entire structure of the poem to suit the Upajati meter, which is not there in the original. Now, there could be allusion to the Vedas for fostering a poetic idea. Rather than taking verbatim, there could also be an allusion. For example, Tungair Akritrimagira Swayamuttamangair Yam Sarvagandahiti Sadara Mudvahanti Amoda Manyam Adhikachati Malikabis Sopitvadiya Kutilalaka Vasitabihi. This is taken from Goda Stuti of Vedanta Deshika, where the poet alludes to the one of the epithets of Vishnu, that is Sarvagandha, which is described in the Vedas. And he says that Sarvagandha means one who has all fragrances, one who has all perfumes within him. But then I think with the garland that Goda gives him, surely even Sarvagandha god might have got an extra gandha, a new gandha, which he had not got till now. Ahushrutim vibhudanayaka tavakinam ashagana prasavahetum adhita vedaha Akarnite tadiyam artarave prajanam ashah prasadayitum adishati swayamtam. This is again from work by Vedanta Deshika, Devanayaka Panchashat, which is about the Vedic saying of the directions being born from the ears of Paramapurusha. And one of the words for the directions in Sanskrit is Asha. Asha not just means directions, it also means hopes and desires. And the poet is making a pun upon this word. He is saying that it is not false that the Vedas have told that directions emanate from your ears, the ashas emanate from your ears. Because when you hear to your devotee's plea, your ear hears to it and sees to it that their ashas are ashas fructify, where asha means both the directions as well as the desires of the devotees. The third is matas samuttitavatim adhivishnu chittam. This is from Goda Stuti, and this is about the moon being born from the mind of Paramapurusha. And the poet is making a pun between Goda and the moon based on this word adhivishnu chittam. Samuttitavatim adhivishnu chittam. You are born from the mind of Vishnu, that is for the moon. The other meaning is Vishnu chitta is the father of Goda, so you were born to Vishnu chitta. So this also alludes to the Vedic belief of the moon being born from the mind of Purusha, Virat Purusha. Allusion to the Vedas for philosophical ideas or stating a fact, usually in connection with praising the Supreme. Vedeshu nirjirapate nikhileshvadhitam vyasadibhir bahumatam tava suktamagryam, which refers to the Purusha Sukta. Angan yamuni bhavata subhagan yadite vishwam vibho janitavanti virincha purvam. It just summarizes what the Purusha Sukta is about, and it tells that the Purusha Sukta mentions the entire universe as having been born from your limbs. Tvam vyahriti pratamata pranavah priyamte samvedayatyakila mantraganastameva. So this is from the Bhustuti, where while praising Bhumi, Mother Earth, the poet says that Tvam vyahriti pratamatah samvedayati. Vyahriti bhurbhuvasvaha first mentions you in the sense mentions Bhumi Devi, and pranavaha priyamte samvedayati. Pranava refers to your Priya Vishnu. The third is from the Nandi Shloka of Vikramorvashiya. Vedanteshu Yamahur Eka Purusham Vyapyastitam Rodasi. He is the Eka Purusha who has engulfed the entire universe. The fourth verse is from Shrikanta Charita by Mankha. Yam Maya Kvachid Anirudhyamana Rupa Nasprashtum Prabhavati Neti Neti Santah Yasminscha Vyavarhati Macharanti Natvam Tatparyad Upanishado Vibho Grunanti. Refers to the way in which the Supreme Lord is known through the process of negation of Neti Neti. Tvam tastas smritavan rucho dashatayis tvatpritaye yajvabihi swahakaram upahitam havirihat tretagni rachamati. This is from Anargha Raghava, which refers to the Lord as having created the Vedas, the Dashatayi, the 10 mandalas of the Rig Veda. This is from Kamasikashtaka by Vedanta Deshika. Tapanen Vagni Nayanas Tapan Apachinotunah Tapaniya Rahasyanam Sara Kamasika Hari, where Narasimha is spoken of as being the Sara, essence of Tapaniya Upanishad. Devota Shruti Kavita. Shruti Kavita is the poet who has composed Shruti Vedas. So Lord Shiva has been spoken of as the poet who composed the Vedas. The next verse is from Padyavali. Chaturnam Vedanam Hridayamidam Akrishya Harina Chaturbir Yadvarnais Putamagati Narayana Padam. Here the word Narayana is said to have been formed by taking the essence of the 4 Vedas. Narayana are said to be the essence of the 4 Vedas which come together to form the word Narayana. The next is Sapta Samopagitam Tvam, where Kalidasa praises Vishnu as Sapta Samopagita, one who is praised by the 7 Samas, Rathantara, Brihat, Vamadevya, Vairupya, Pavamana, Vaishaja and Chandramasa. The next is from Shishupala, where the Dattatreya form of Vishnu is alluded to. Sampradaya Vigamad Upeyushi Resha Nasham Avinashi Vigraha Smartum Apratihata Smriti Shrutir Datta Ityabhava Datrigotrajaha, where Dattatreya is spoken of as having revived the Vedas when they had all but been destroyed. The Vedas Omkara as well as Vedangas have been used as Upamana and Upameya. Just few examples will suffice. Chirantana Saraswati Chikurabandha Sairandrikaha, where the words of Yatiraja, that is Ramanuja, are spoken of as the hairdressers for Veda. Veda is like a lady. The Upanishads are like the shiras of that lady, that is the Kesha Pasha, the beautiful tresses of that lady, and the Yatirajas, that is Ramanuja's words are spoken of as being the hairdressers for that Kesha Pasha. Nigama Jaladhi Vela Purna Chandro Yatindraha, where the Vedas are compared to the ocean. Nigama Patika Chaya Shaki, where the Acharya is spoken of as being a tree for rest on the path of, on those who are traversing the path of Vedas. Again, Raghuvamsha's almost the first verse of the story, Asin Mahikshita Madhya Pranavas Chandasamiva, where Vaivasvata Manu is spoken of as being the first among the kings, like just as Pranava is the first among the Vedas. Later in the same canto, we have other verses, Anvasita Marundhatya Swaha Eva Haiverbhujam, Patni Sudakshinetyasi Dadvarasyeva Dakshina, etc. This is the next verse is a very it's a very special type of verse which tells about the one of the Vedangas, that is the Vyakarana. Sabhavasya bhavakshayika heto sita saptescha vidhasyato sahartam ripurapa parabhavaya madhyam prakriti pratyayoriva anubandha. So Arjuna and the Kirata are fighting with each other, and the Asura, Mukasura, who comes as a boar, is in between them. So he is compared to the It Sanya, which comes between the Prakriti and the Pratyaya of Pratyaya and Vyakarana. Shishya, the next few lines are from Harsha Charita of by Banabhatta. Shishyadvayeneva padakrama mukharena nupura yogalena vachalita charana. Goddess Saraswati, her anklets are compared to two Shishyas, two students. And why are they garrulous? Why are they making a lot of noise? Because one of them is studying the Padapatha and the other is studying the Karmapatha. The next is a very beautiful verse from Naishada, where Omkara is spoken of as being responsible for the creation of Saraswati. Bro dalabhyam pranavasya yasyas tadbinduna bhala tamala patram tadardha chandrena vidhar vipanchi nikwana nakona dhanu praninye. The poet says that when Brahma created Saraswati, he took out parts from the Omkara. He took out the dala, the two petals of the Omkara, and formed her eyebrows. And what did he do with the bindu of the Omkara? He made the Kunkuma bindu of her forehead. And what did he do with that? What did he do with the Ardhachandra mark? The Ardhachandra mark. What did he do is he used it to make the curved end of her veena. The next is from Garuda Panchashat, where Garuda is spoken of as being Samaveda itself, the various Samas itself. The next is from Kiratarjuniya, Apratarkyataya Nyesham Amnaya Vachanopamam. Arjuna's words were Indra's words were like almost like Amnaya Veda, because nobody could shake it. The next few verses are from, these are well known. Upanishad Aravinda Kuhara Madhudaram from Arya Shataka by Mukha Kavi. Shrutinam Murdhano Dadati Tavayau Shekarataya from Saundara Lahari. The next verse, most of you know, Omkara Panjar Shukim, Upanishad Udyana Keli Kalahamsim, Agama Vipina Mayurim, Aryam Antar Vibhavaye Gaurim. The next two verses are from Naishadiya Charita. Madhye Sabam Sava Tatara Bala, Gandharva Vidyamaya Kantanala, Trayimai Bhuta Vali Vibhanga, Sahitya Nirvartita Triktaranga, where the various Vedangas are compared to the various parts of the goddess. Asid Atharva Trivali Trivedi Mulad Vinirgatya Vitayamana, Nanabhicharochita Mechakashri, Shrutir, it must be Shrutir Yadiyodara Romarekha, where the trivalis, that is the three folds of skin that are present on the abdomen of the goddess, are compared to the three Vedas, and the Romaraji, a line of hair from there, is compared to the Atharva. And why is it black? Because Atharva itself is about black magic. Chatvaro Vayam Ritvijas Sabhagavan Karmopadeshta Hari. This is again from Veni Samhara, which brings in the metaphor of Yajna to the war. Kamala Nirapaya Dharma Patni Karunadya Swayamritvijo Gunaste Avanam Shrayata Mahinamadhyam. Where here this in this verse from Paramartha Stuti, the Vishnu himself is said to be performing the performing the yajna of protecting the world. So all the other things are the entire verse is built upon this metaphor of protecting itself being like a yajna. दिशामलीकालक बंगतां गतस्त्रयीवधू कर्ण तमाल पल्लवः चकार यस्याध्वर धूम संचयो मलीमस शुक्लतरम निजम यश. From Kadambari, when Bana is speaking about one of his forefathers, he tells that he used to perform lot of sacrifices, and the dhuma, the smoke that used to emanate from the sacrificial kunda, how was it? Trayivadhu karna tamala pallava. It was like a tamala, a leaf of the tamala tree, the dark leaf of tamala tree, which Veda used to keep as her ear ornament. These are some of the descriptions of the Vedangas. Shikshaiva sakshat charitam yadiyam. Saraswati's walking itself is shiksha. Kalpa shriya kalpa vidhir yadiyah. And what is kalpa? It is her akalpa vidhi, that is her ornaments. Yasya samarsthartha nirukti rupai nirukti vidya खलु पर्यणं सीत् जात्या च वृत्त्येन च विद्यमानं छन्दो भुजद्वन्द्वमयो अभूत यदीयं. Her two arms are nothing but the chandas, and you know that every verse contains two halves. So the parva, that is the joint of her arm, is like that one half of the verse. Asamshayam sa gunadirgha bhava kritam dadhana vitatim yadiya vidhayika. This tells about how she is like Vyakarana. How her kanchi, her waistband is like Vyakarana itself. Stitaiva kante parinamya hara lata babu odita tara vritta, where her hara, that is the necklace of pearls which she is wearing, is like the Jyotisha. The next verse is from Raghuvamsha, which alludes to Shiksha. Puranasya kavestasya varnasthana samirita babuva krita samskara charitartheva bharati, and which alludes to the various parts of Shiksha. Saptabheda karakalpita swaram samavid asangamujjagau tatra sunrita girascha suraya punyam mrigyajusha madhyagishata. This is from Shishupala, which tells about the poet's knowledge of kalpa. And this, the last verse, pragantah karana mamushya kevalam ye prajanan bhuvi navanita nirmitam te abhyaktam navanita charchikabis tam vignya bahirapi tanmayam vijagnuhu. This is from Shivalila Arnava, where the Malayadhvaja Pandya is performing a sacrifice, and before performing the sacrifice, he has applied, as per the rules of the sacrifice, applied butter over his body. And the poet says that earlier people thought that only his heart was buttery. Now they understood that even his outside was buttery. These are some of praises of the Vedas and Vedangas by both these verses have been taken from Prabodha Chandrodaya. Because of lack of time, I am not dwelling upon these. The Vedic ritual made a subject for description. For example, descriptions of marriage have lot of Vedic rituals being described by poets. Ashmanam, this is about Ashmarohana. Ashmanam aropayitum padabjam alambamane daite mragakshyah padagraha prathamikoyamasya prachiyatam ityavadan mukundah. You all know about how the groom makes the bride climb a stone, which is called as the Drishadarohana, and this verse is taken from Shivalila Arnava, where Shiva is making Meenakshi climb a stone, and he is holding her leg to help her climb the stone. And then the poet is making a joke on this and saying that from now on, whenever she gets angry, you will be catching hold of her leg, and this is the first time you are practicing it. Tatah Kumari Gurunabhyudirita Samunnatakshim Dhruvamaikshatamri. This is about Dhruva Darshana. Nitamba Gurvi Guruna Prayukta Vadhur Vidhatru Pratimenatena Chakarasa Mattra Chakora Netra. This is about Laja Homa. Dhavena Sadarshi Vadhur Arundatim. This is about Arundhati Darshana. Davena Sadarshi Vadhur Arundatim Sati Mimam Pashya Gatam Ivanutam Kritasya Purvam Hridi Bhupate Krite Trini Kritas Svargapater Janaditi. Nala is showing Damayanti the Arundhati star, and he is telling her that she has become so tiny because you have grown so tall in stature in front of her, having disowned even Indra who came to marry you. So you are greater than Arundhati. Arundhati is probably shy to face you. That's why she has become so tiny like a star. Um, these are few examples where the Vedic way of life is described. The second example is from Mahavira Charita, which shows the poet's grasp over the Vedic way of life. Chuda chumbita kankapatram abhita stunadvayam prishtato basmastoka pavitra lanchanamuro datte tvacham rauravim maurvya mekhalaya niyantritam adho vasascha manjishtakam panau karmukam akshasutra valayam dandopara paipalah. And this alludes to various things in like a king has to a king at the time of Upanayana has to, one from a Kshatriya family has to hold the danda of Pippala tree, and all these things have been brought out in this verse. Sometimes Vedas are also criticized. For example, this is the third verse from Shivalila Arnava. Balyam viduh prakrita bhashitani shruti smriti vruddha dasham vadanti sahityam ekantu giram savityas tarunyam udgadha mushantya vignaha. The poet says that prakrita bhashitani, the day-to-day talk, the talk of the vulgar masses, is balyam viduh prakrita bhashitani. It is like Saraswati's balya, childhood. The speech of the masses is like Saraswati's childhood. Shruti smriti vruddha dasham vadanti. Shruti and smriti are like the old age of Saraswati. Then what is her youth? Sahityam ekam tu giram savityas tarunyam. Only Sahitya is can be called truly as the youth of goddess of speech. With these verses, and I did not have enough time to dwell upon all the verses, but thanks for giving me this opportunity to share whatever I know.
Professor Kannan for his comments, please.
We have listened to a very interesting talk by Dr. Shankar. He is a very young man and is from a totally different field. As you heard, he is from the field of medicine. But he is a poet by himself. Dr. Shankar is a poet of such a high stature that I even wanted to be very alert while he was citing the verses, whether they were his own compositions, attributing it to the great poets. He is widely read in Sanskrit, and you can see the various sources from which he cited. Of course, within the span of half an hour, one cannot do much more than this. But he has himself written kavyas which are of a very high standard, extolled by none other than a person of the stature of none other than Vidwan Mahamahopadhyaya Ranganatha Sharma, who says that he is Appai Dikshita incarnate. So he is a poet of such a high stature. So, and he has also written kavyas which are full of chitrabandhas, which is not at all easy in Sanskrit. I mean, it's possible only in Sanskrit, and even the best of poets find it very difficult. So sometimes they will have to resort to some rare lexica, rare ekakshara koshas and so on, and it's only with the aid of a commentary that one can understand the other sense that is implied, or some chitrabandha that is involved there, some complex structure that is involved there, and so on. But Shankar's verses are so simple that they should be really called amazingly simple, because in spite of their simplicity that they have, and they incorporate such complex structures, so called chitrabandhas. So to illustrate that itself will take quite some time, and therefore I'll refrain from doing that. So his compositions are of a very high stature, and the one thing that he did to learn Sanskrit is he read V.S. Apte's Sanskrit English Dictionary cover to cover some 30 times. Am I right? And cover to cover 30 times. Okay? That itself is marvelous. And he has got an amazing memory power. And like Ganesh, he is also entitled to forget small things in life because he remembers only very big things. So he has performed avadhanas and come out very successfully. And on stage, see, extempore, he has composed verses on given themes effortlessly. It would look to the ordinary audience, an ordinary audience, as though it's all stage managed and match fixing has been done. So a poet of such an eminence. So we are all fortunate to have had him here. Thank you, Dr. Shankar, very much.